The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Monday, May 16th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here, and we're glad to have you back. We had an extended weekend due to my skull. Yeah, that's right. I had my first ever migraine headache on Thursday. Now, my wife is a patient in Oregon for migraines, and I know a lot of people think migraine headache might be some way of faking a medical marijuana card, but let me assure you, that hurts. It's awful. It's terrible. Oh, my God. It took me down. Hey, let's bring Ganja John on here. Ganja John's here with us as well. Hi, Ganja John.
What's up, Russ? How you doing?
Me, but just barely, man. Glad
just
to have
barely.
you here. How was your weekend?
I had a good weekend. Didn't do a whole lot, but, did my thing.
Yeah, everybody taking it easy. And also joining us from our virtual studio in beautiful Grastoria, Oregon, is Cannabis Carrie.
I'm so glad you're feeling better, Russ.
I am. Thursday was bad. Light hurt. I had to stay down here in the basement with all the doors closed and windows closed and just kind of curled up into a ball and let that pain pass. It's pretty awful. And, boy, if I didn't have any cannabis, I think it would have been twice as bad. How did your weekend turn out?
Oh, my weekend was great. The weather was nice. We got a lot of chores done, a lot of spring cleaning done, which makes me feel fantastic today. And I'm glad you're feeling better now. That was your first migraine. You had never had those before?
Yeah, I'm not a guy I don't even really get headaches.
Right.
So it totally caught me by surprise. And, as I was laying there, my wife says, sounds like you've got a migraine. Does light hurt? Does sound hurt? Does your head feel tender? I'm like, yes. It feels like someone stuck an ice pick through the top of my head behind my left eye. Yep, that's a migraine, she says. So,
well, let's hope that's an isolated incident.
I think so. I think it's probably just stress-related, flying off to Dallas or to Austin, getting all sunburned, working so hard. Yeah, I just got to take it a little bit easier. So we will keep bringing you shows here at NORML Show Live. So thanks everybody for your concern. Let's get to the news. We do our news right after the first break here. Cannabis Carrie brings us our hemp headlines, and there's some great news this week, right, Carrie?
Yeah, we're starting the week off with a bang. We've got to tell you some news about the 16th state that has passed a medical marijuana law. Also, a case that a lot of physicians in medical marijuana states have been watching very closely was thrown out of court. We're going to talk about that. And some new movement in all the things that are going on in Montana. And then some news about Google. So all that coming up in today's Hemp Headlines.
Okay, Hemp Headlines right after our first break. And then at 20 after, Cannabob brings us our Roots Monday music and a favorite from our friends, the Tall Brothers out of Canada, a live version of If You're a Viper. So this will be pretty cool. And then at half past the hour, we're going to go into an extended session. Get your pens and paper out because I'm going to teach you all about felon disenfranchisement and how that is hampering us in changing marijuana laws, changing drug laws in this country. Believe it or not, folks, if you're a convicted drug felon out there, chances are you probably can vote. That's right, you probably can vote. Check us out at half past the hour. We'll tell you which states you are allowed to vote in, and in the other states, what you have to do to get your vote back. It's NORML Show Live, Voice of the Marijuana Nation. We're right back after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
The fact is today, people don't go to jail for possession of marijuana. I know you like to pretend it does, and there's a lot of misinformation about that, but finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn. You find one, you will make a big story because it doesn't exist. Finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn.
NORML Show Live, the National Wildlife Refuge for Marijuana Unicorns.
I'm gonna light me a pipe of inspiration. I'm gonna blow away troubles on my head. I'm gonna leave this plastic place to your plastic reveries and travel to a better place and travel to a better place and travel to a better place instead.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
In our top story today, on Friday, Delaware Democratic Governor Jack Markell signed a medical marijuana bill making Delaware the 16th state to legalize marijuana for medical use. Despite the onslaught of federal letters to medical marijuana states and thinly veiled threats against state employees who are doing their job, Governor Markell went ahead and signed the legislation that passed the Senate on Wednesday with a 17-4 vote, without a ceremony, behind closed doors, and in private, according to his office. With his signature, patients who have a serious medical condition that is verified by a physician can possess up to 6 ounces or 170 grams of medical marijuana. While a clear victory for marijuana advocates, the bill does not allow home cultivation, but rather allows patients to purchase the cannabis from 3 state-licensed dispensaries. That's a provision that may have some trouble with the new focus from the feds on going after distribution centers of medical marijuana. A spokesman for the Delaware governor said that he wanted to sign the measure into law quickly after it passed the Senate, since he understands the lengthy time it may take to get a state-run distribution system up and running. Delaware law would now allow state citizens who are over 18 that have a debilitating condition that could be relieved by marijuana to register for a card that would allow them or their designated caregiver to purchase medical cannabis at one of the 3 dispensaries the state will license. There will be 1 dispensary allowed in each of the 3 counties in the state. Also in the bill, patients can get a medical marijuana card for HIV and AIDS, cancer, cirrhosis, ALS, Alzheimer's, and PTSD. Patients would also be able to qualify for persistent pain if they have not responded to previously prescribed medication or surgical measures for at least 3 months prior, where the treatment hasn't brought relief or the other pain treatments produced serious side effects. Also in the qualifying conditions, cachexia or wasting syndrome, intractable nausea, seizures, or persistent muscle spasms. A caregiver would be allowed to purchase and transport medical cannabis for a patient that has designated them, but no caregiver will be allowed to care for more than 5 patients. Only the weight of the usable medicine is considered in the patient's 6-ounce limits, not the weight of preparations such as brownies or other edibles, and patients are protected from DUIDs if they only have the presence of marijuana metabolites in their urine. Schools are not allowed to discriminate against patients enrolling, and landlords may not discriminate against patients when it comes to housing. Medical care, including organ transplants, cannot be denied to medical marijuana patients, and medical use may not be used against a parent in court when it comes to child custody. Employers cannot discriminate against medical marijuana patients who test positive on a urine or drug screen unless failing to do so would cause the school or employer to lose a monetary or licensing-related benefit under federal law. And if you want to work in a dispensary, you must be 21 and have no drug misdemeanor convictions in the past 5 years. If you've ever had a drug felony, you will not be permitted to work or own a dispensary. All in all, the bill is a good one except for the provision against home cultivation. And activists in the states are already watching and waiting for the dispensary regulations and hope to add home cultivation by amendment sometime in the future. Congratulations to the state of Delaware, and thank you, Governor Markell. We can add another 885,000 Americans that live in a state that recognizes the benefits of medical marijuana.
Yeah, this was great news on Friday, the signature of the 16th medical marijuana state. Now, just my couple of notes on this. I'm thrilled that they have the protections for organ transplants, for housing, for schools, all of this stuff. You know, Ganja John's here on the show because of that very issue, and it seems like they're finally coming to their sentences on these newest bills.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I threw my arms up when Carrie said that.
It's amazing, yeah. And also, you know, when we start to look at the New England states now here on my map of marijuana states of America, aside from New Hampshire and Connecticut, all of the New England states have either medical marijuana or decriminalization, or in the case of Maryland, have that new improved affirmative defense. So we've turned almost all of New England green of one shade or another. Connecticut is still working on their decrim bill, and they're having hearings this week, as a matter of fact. New Hampshire might be a tough nut to crack, but other than that, it looks like the entire New England area is very pro-cannabis, and we're going to keep it that way.
And in Colorado, a victory for medical practitioners that recommend using medical cannabis as a treatment therapy. Last week, one of the first known doctors in the state to be charged with writing a shoddy medical marijuana recommendation had the case against him thrown out of court. Dr. Toribio Mestis had been facing charges of attempting to influence a public servant, marijuana distribution, forgery, and conspiracy to distribute marijuana after he wrote a medical marijuana recommendation for an undercover police officer last year in Inglewood. On last Wednesday, Arapahoe County District Judge Kurt Horton ruled that Dr. Mestis had complied with the requirements of Colorado's Constitution when he made his recommendation for the use of medical cannabis. In his ruling, he said, quote, Colorado's Amendment 20 simply allows for a physician to certify that a patient might benefit from the use of marijuana as a medical treatment, and then it is left up to the patient whether to apply for a medical marijuana registry card. This case throws into question a similar charge against another Colorado doctor after the state accused him of writing bad medical marijuana recommendations around the same time last year on the heels of a series of undercover stings against medical professionals who issue medical marijuana recommendations. A statement after the ruling from the Arapahoe County District Attorney's Office says that they will be reviewing the ruling to determine whether an appeal is appropriate. In the case against Dr. Mestis, an undercover officer with the fictitious name of Joseph Butkus visited his office that was linked to a dispensary. He complained of daily back pain and said that because of the serious pain, he had trouble sleeping. Prosecutors tried to use the argument that the officer never told the doctor he had severe pain, only serious pain. But Dr. Mestis, along with another doctor, testified in court that such a diagnosis was implied based on what the officer did say. Judge Horton agreed, finding that Dr. Mestis had performed the needed exam and had given the officer sufficient time and attention to make such a recommendation. The ruling stated, quote, Dr. Mestis could have done more to support his physician certification that Butkus needed marijuana. However, the court cannot find that Amendment 20 expressly required more. Arapahoe prosecutors are still pursuing the charges against a second doctor, Dr. Manuel Aquino, and his trial is set for August. Both of the cases originated before the 2010 legislature adopted rules that mandate a doctor offer follow-up care and do a thorough physical exam before they can write a medical marijuana recommendation. But attorneys for both doctors say that their clients were already in compliance with the stricter rules. Dr. Aquino's lawyers are planning on making the same arguments in their case in August.
You know, these are such sketchy cases when they try to get, they send these cops undercover. They give them a fake ID, like a fake driver's license from the state, right? So there's no way you could tell it was a fake, but they give them a fake name and then they send them to a doctor and they lie to these doctors about their conditions and then they get a recommendation from the doctor and then they go to these dispensaries and they purchase their medicine and oh my God, big problem, right? But everybody along these steps along the way, right? The doctor, he looked at the patient, he examined the patient, he believed the patient was telling him the truth, he checked the patient's ID, it appeared to be valid. The doctors in these cases aren't doing anything wrong, and the dispensaries in these cases aren't doing anything wrong. Look, a legitimate doctor's recommendation, what appears to be a legitimate ID, they're following the rules. And that's what's so frustrating about this, is, they give us these hoops to jump through, these big, huge hoops to jump through to do this legally, and we do so, and we go all the way, to these great extents to follow these laws, these medical marijuana laws, and then they want to set up these stings to bust us for following the law. It's ridiculous. Let's just go ahead and legalize for everyone so we can quit this stupid game of trying to separate the patients from the criminals.
And if you think that fight for medical marijuana in Montana is winding down, I want to tell you it's just gearing up. We told you that Montana recently passed legislation that would have seriously cut back the number of patients allowed to qualify for medical marijuana from the current enrollment of around 30,000 to under 2,000, and all the while essentially banning all medical marijuana businesses. Montana passed their medical marijuana law by a citizen vote back in 2004 with over 60% of the voters saying yes. Medical marijuana activists in the state have been busy working on ways to block the new legislation before it begins and are making plans to tear it down after it is instituted. They were able to raise $50,000 in just a few days to hire one of the state's top constitutional lawyers, and that gamble has already paid off. On Friday, a judge signed an order to stop some parts of the new law from being enacted. The judge's new ruling only suspends the new law's ban on advertising medical marijuana products, most of which are set to become illegal in July. But proponents say this is only the beginning of tearing down the new law that was enacted by legislators against the will of the voters. Although they agree that the new rules will send most recreational users who have been able to obtain a medical marijuana recommendation back to the black market, they argue that it will also punish the thousands of patients with medical conditions that are alleviated with cannabis. Patients will still be allowed to grow their own medical cannabis, but for so many, that is impractical or even impossible and takes far too much time for, say, a cancer patient. So most will be forced to return to the black market to get relief. Named plaintiff Charlie Hamp is a 79-year-old man whose wife suffered esophageal cancer. Her weight plummeted down to 88 pounds, and then she was saved by using a cannabis tincture in her morning coffee. Their provider of cannabis tincture will be out of business under the new regulations, and now her husband will become her provider, a task he is reluctant to undertake since he has no clue how to obtain and care for seedlings or grow the plants, or how much time it will take him to master the skills to grow and then learn how to manufacture the tincture that his debilitated wife uses. The legal brief that led to the judge putting a stop on the advertising provision of the bill said, quote, "At their age and in their condition, the last thing they need is for a big brother government to come into their lives and dictate what they can and cannot do about their personal health and well-being." Now, this may be the first chip in the new law, and activists are gearing up for a long legal fight, one that they say they plan on winning. As always, we will keep you posted.
Yeah, this is going to go on for some while. I know they're filing also another initiative to perhaps reverse a lot of these things. Reversal of the ad ban seems pretty logical because that right there is a First Amendment issue that we're talking about. Despite the fact that they're advertising for marijuana, is really tricky when you try to stop businesses from advertising, and I think that's what the judge is thinking there. Again, we will keep you posted on this as it develops. All right, one quick little story here. The feds are clamping down on online ads for drugs on Google. Now, this has to do with prescription drug abuse, which is now the fastest growing drug abuse trend in America. And much of it can be traced to the ease with which one can order all manner of pharmaceuticals on the internet. This is from the New York Times. Federal regulators are investigating Google on suspicion of illegally displaying ads for online pharmacies that are operating outside the law, government officials said Thursday. Google has set aside $500 million, $500 million, to pay for a potential settlement, according to a Securities and Exchange Commission filing the company made on Tuesday. It said the money was for the, quote, potential resolution of an investigation by the United States Department of Justice into the use of Google advertising by certain advertisers, end quote, but gave no details. So what we've got here is the feds going after these online pharmacies by attacking them at the source of their advertising. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, keep in mind that according to the federal government, marijuana is a Schedule I drug with no medicinal benefits, and a very important sentence just jumped right off the page to me when I was reading the New York Times. Here it is. Websites are liable for advertising that breaks federal criminal law, according to Eric Goldman, director of the High Tech Law Institute at Santa Clara University. Now, not just websites, but also print publications, radio, and television. So if you're reading this in a medical marijuana state, go open your local alt weekly, go to your alt weekly paper, check the advertising on the back pages. There'll be 9-10 pages of ads in dispensary states for all these dispensaries. Or get on the internet and look up all the pro-medical marijuana websites and the aggregators that serve up listings. I mean, you find things like weedmaps.com. I mean, Google's taking out $500 million to prepare for a settlement on the advertising of legal prescription drugs being sold illegally. Can you imagine what the Department of Justice will handle the advertising for illegal marijuana? It's only a matter of time, John.
Wow.
Yeah, they're coming. They're going to find every way they can attack. Attack the doctors, attack the advertising, attack the money, put Mark Emery in jail. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would tell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after a word from these 420 friendly sponsors. Wait a minute. This is internet radio. There are no dials here.
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From a friend's closet grow room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
The official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains is available at hightimes.com and finer bookstores.
Cannabis. Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
If you like what you hear and would like to donate to the cause, send your check or money order to NORML Show Live, 1600 K Street Northwest, Suite 501, Washington, D.C., 20006. Your donation is a tax-deductible gift to the NORML Foundation and will be used to help support this online media. Thank you. It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Roots Monday, our celebration of the music that evolved into the popular modern music of today. We pick the best of blues, country, folk, and jazz with a 420 feel and serve it up for you every Monday. Brought to you by Cannabis Carry in Astoria, Oregon, and CannabisFantastic.com. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, Send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Roots Monday Toker Tune. I'm Canna Bob, and I'm also your host of the Viper Hour, which airs every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time right here on the NORML Network. And coincidentally enough, today's Roots Monday Toker Tune is a song that you can hear on the Viper Hour. As a matter of fact, it's the theme song of the Viper Hour. Every week we play this song by a different artist, and today we're going to hear it by the Tall Brothers from Vancouver, Canada. The Tall Brothers consist of Tom Small on the bass, fiddle, and vocals, and his brother Bill Small on the guitar and vocals. And if you enjoy the song stylings of the Tall Brothers, make sure to tune into the Viper Hour today at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, as the Tall Brothers will be our featured artist on today's Viper Hour. So be sure and check that out. But right now, let's enjoy a rare video of the Tall Brothers performing If You're a Viper, here on your Roots Monday Toker Tune.
The mighty man, but not too strong. You'll get high, but not for long. If you're a viper, I'm the king of everything. I say I gotta get high so I can swing. Light a tea and let it be. If you're a viper, when your mouth gets dry and you know you're high, everything's dandy. Jog on down to the candy store, blow your top on peppermint candy. Then you know that your money spent, and you don't care if you don't pay rent. Sky is high and so am I. If you're a viper, for 5 feet long. That mighty man, but not too strong. You get high, but not for long. If you're a viper, I'm the king of everything. I say I gotta get high so I can swing. Light a tea and let it be. If you're a viper, when your throat gets dry and you know you're high, everything's dandy. Jog on down to the candy store, blow your top on peppermint candy. Then you know that your money's spent, and you don't care if you don't pay rent. Sky is high and so am I. If you're a viper, sky is high and so am I. If you're a viper.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media, and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana smoker? Have you or is someone in your family been arrested for a marijuana violation? You need to know the truth about pot. NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is the most comprehensive source of information regarding marijuana and its effects on health, as well as legal issues. NORML even offers a database of lawyers specializing in cannabis in your area. NORML, the nation's largest and most successful marijuana law reform organization, has spent decades gathering the knowledge and science on everything related to cannabis. NORML is the best resource to find out the truth about marijuana, connect with a lawyer in your area, or help find an end to prohibition. Information is available at NORML.org, that's NORML.org, or toll free at 888-67-NORML.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore! You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth!
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth!
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant. All right, folks, an extended rant for today because I've been doing a lot of research on this topic since Jennifer Alexander brought it up on the show, a week or two ago. And it's the topic of felon disenfranchisement. She's the campaign manager for the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, which is currently gathering signatures. And of course, when you gather signatures, you have to ask if the person signing is a registered voter. And so many times the response we get back is, oh, no, I can't vote. I'm a felon. Right? I was convicted of a drug felony. Well, the fact is that so many of you that think that you cannot vote, you actually can. I want to take a look at some of this data here that I've put together, and this will be all presented as well in my big book of marijuana facts that I'm putting together. And this is a slide that I've showed you before of the arrests in the war on drugs. Now, over in the top right corner there, the chart that's got the gray and got the green on it, that's the chart of arrests in America, drug arrests. Now, the green section of that is the section representing marijuana arrests, 20.8 million marijuana arrests since 1970. And then the gray section is all the arrests for things that aren't marijuana, crack and meth and ecstasy and LSD, whatever, right? Now, as we look at that, we have 858,000 people arrested every year on marijuana offenses, and then a total of about 1.6 million people arrested on all drug offenses combined. And as the pie charts show you, when it comes to other drugs, the possession, 75% of those arrests are for possession alone, and when it comes to marijuana, 88% of those arrests are for possession alone. And what this turns out to be is that we have 46% of all arrests in America for any drug whatsoever. 46% of those arrests are for marijuana. 6% are for marijuana manufacturing. So all marijuana arrests combined make up 52% of the arrests in the war on drugs. Now, this has the effect of putting more people behind bars in the United States than in any other country in the world. 2.3 million prisoners, if you include people in jail, county jail, state jail, and so on. 2.3 million people behind bars in the United States, 23% of the world's imprisoned. We are outdoing China, not just per capita, but overall. The entire nation of China only has 1.6 million prisoners. And of course, this has an effect that is very much like the Jim Crow laws of the past, with those 1.5 million U.S. federal and state prisoners, and that's just the prison population, not the jails. 67% of the U.S. population is white. 70% of the people that use marijuana every month are white. 71% of the people who use all illegal drugs are white. But when you look at the makeup of prison, 45% of drug prisoners are black, 19% are Hispanic. Another way to think of it, 2 out of 3 people in America are white, but 2 out of 3 people doing time for drugs are not. And that has led, of course, to our prison population, this blue area, dating back all the way to 1935. We had about 250,000 people in prison. But once we hit 1970 in the war on drugs, you can see how that imprisonment rate just skyrockets to the point now where we have 1.6 million people behind bars. And of those 1.6 million, 23% of them are there on some sort of drug charge. Now, this is why I wanted to talk about felon disenfranchisement, because once these people are busted, so many of these charges involving drugs end up being some sort of felony charge. And we're going to take a look at another map here, a map of the United States. Let me flip back to this one here, which will give you an idea of what I'm talking about for felon disenfranchisement. It's costing us so many votes when we were looking at changing these laws. There's a great song by Carolyn Wonderland where she talks about, I can't even vote to change the laws that put me down. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. People that are busted in the drug war thinking they've lost their right to vote, or in many cases actually losing their right to vote, who then cannot do anything about the laws that put them down. On this chart, what I've done is I've color-coded the United States based on its felon disenfranchisement rules. Only the black-colored states on this map are felons permanently barred from voting. Only the black-colored states. So we're talking about Washington State, Wyoming, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, and Florida. And then there's a few states there that are kind of shaded both black and red. In those states, Nevada, Arizona, and Nebraska, first-time felons don't lose their right to vote. But the second time you commit a felony, you lose your right to vote. So all of those black-colored states are a place where you are permanently losing your right to vote, and in some cases you can apply to get your right to vote back. In Florida, for example, there's a 5 to 7 year waiting period after you've finished your parole, your probation, paid all your fines, gotten out of jail. You have to wait 5 to 7 years, depending on the drug felony, to apply to the clemency board to get your right to vote back. In Alabama, you can apply to get your right to vote back. In Tennessee, drug felons can apply to get their right to vote back. In Virginia, there's a 5-year waiting period, but you can still apply to get your voting rights back. In Kentucky, you have to apply for a pardon from the governor in order to get your voting rights back. In Nebraska, there's a 2-year waiting period. In Wyoming, first-time nonviolent felons can wait 5 years to apply for their voting rights back. Second-timers have to apply directly to the governor. Nevada and Arizona, same situations. First-time felons can get their vote back immediately upon completing their sentence, but second-timers have to apply for their voting rights. And in Washington, it's still questionable because the Ninth Circuit Court has ruled it unconstitutional to take away their voting rights. That's on appeal to the United States Supreme Court. So at the current moment in Washington State, if you're a convicted felon, you cannot vote. But all the rest of the states in the United States have color-coded red, orange, yellow, and green. Now, let's start from the green states. The green states are states that have absolutely no restriction on a felon voting. You can actually vote from prison in these states. While you're serving your felony time, you can vote absentee. And these are only 3 states. In Maine and Vermont, you are allowed to vote at any time, even while you're serving prison time. Now, an interesting state is Mississippi. Mississippi, you've noticed I've colored black to green, because in Mississippi there are 21 specific felonies where you lose your right to vote. But drug felonies are not counted amongst those 21 specific felonies. So actually in Mississippi, if you're serving felony time for a drug charge, you can vote from prison, just like you can in Maine and Vermont. Now, as we look at the rest of the states, the levels of yellow, orange, and red, are indicating people that cannot vote while they're serving time for their felony, but once they get out, they can vote. And it depends on the level here. In the yellow states, you can only not vote if you're currently in prison. But if you're on parole or probation, you can vote. So those are the best of all these felon disenfranchisement states. And that's going to include the state of Oregon, Utah, Montana, North Dakota, and most of the Great Lakes states, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. In all those yellow states and the District of Columbia, you can vote after you have gotten out of prison, even if you're still on parole or probation. Now, the orange states are places where you cannot vote if you're incarcerated or on parole, but if you're on probation, you can still vote. So that would count Connecticut, New York, South Dakota, Colorado, and California. And then the red states, which make up most of the states, about 18 of them, these red states are the ones where you cannot vote if you're incarcerated, on parole, or probation. But once you've finished your sentence, once you've finished your parole, your probation, paid your fines, gotten out of prison, you can vote. And that's Alaska, Idaho, New Mexico, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Wisconsin, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia, New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware. Now, there's also one other way that our voting rights are taken away from us. In 10 states, they actually take away your voting rights if you're incarcerated for a misdemeanor. Any misdemeanor. And those are the states with the blue outlines, which include Idaho, South Dakota, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, or South Carolina. So basically, in those blue states, those states with the blue outlines, I should say, if you're in jail for whatever, felony or misdemeanor, you can't vote. So my home state of Idaho, one of the worst states that's not a black state, if you're in jail for anything, even a minor misdemeanor, you can't vote. In all the other states, you can. You can vote absentee. And then in Iowa and West Virginia that are colored teal there with the teal outlines, those have certain misdemeanors for which you cannot vote. Drug misdemeanors are included in there as well. Now, what this means, by all of this felon disenfranchisement, this means that 2.4% of the overall voting population in the United States of America cannot vote. And when we are arresting 1.6 million people a year, and keep in mind that those numbers add up year after year. So these people that think they can't vote because they're felons, or in the cases of Florida, Alabama, all those black states actually can't vote because they're felons, this is causing us to lose support for our marijuana reform initiatives. So many of these people would be signing these petitions. They would be working with us to try to pass these laws to help end marijuana prohibition, but because they either can't vote because of their law, or they think they can't vote because a parole officer, probation officer, or just, general wisdom has told them that they can't vote because they're a felon. We are losing so many votes and so many signatures because of this. And that's why I wanted to make this a focus of today's show. Because there are so many places where we could be gathering signatures from, say, prisons. We could be gathering votes and registering voters in prisons, people that would support reforming these drug laws. So many people behind bars for nonviolent drug offenses could be extra signatures on our pages. So I wanted everybody to know about this. Now, the other thing about this disenfranchisement, is how it affects African American voting totals. 8.3% of all African Americans are disenfranchised at this point. 8.3% are disenfranchised. 1 out of 12 we're talking about here that cannot vote because of these disenfranchisement laws. And we know how racially disproportionate the arrests and conviction rates for African Americans are compared to white Americans in this country for drug crimes. We see that this war on drugs is a systematic way of denying African Americans the right to vote. And in her excellent book about the drug war, the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander shows how more black people are disenfranchised because of the drug war now than were disenfranchised because of Jim Crow laws during Reconstruction. This is just Jim Crow by another name, folks. It's felon disenfranchisement. And worst of all, of course, Florida. We mentioned in Florida that you got the 5 to 7 year waiting period before you can even apply to the clemency board after you've finished all your parole, probation, and so on, right? So imagine that you're sentenced to, let's say, 10 years in Florida, so you're not voting for 2 presidential elections, and then you got to wait another 5 years or 7 years after you get out. So now there's another 3 or 4 presidential elections you haven't been able to vote in, and then you've got to apply to the governor. You got to apply, this clemency board. You got to apply to this clemency board just to get your vote back. Who knows how long that takes? And this adds up and adds up and adds up to the point where now, in the state of Florida, 9% of all their citizens, 9%, and a stunning 18.8% of all African Americans cannot vote in the state of Florida. This is so contrary to our democracy, so contrary to what we would understand as being an American value. We have got to change some of these laws. We've got to take a look at defelonizing so many of these drug crimes. I'm peppered by questions from activists all over the country, and I'm here in Oregon where, of course, we have medical marijuana, we have decriminalization. But sometimes people say, well, Russ, there's no way we're going to get medical. There's no way they're going to decrim here in our state, in whatever state you might be in. Well, How about defelonizing some of these crimes? How about raising the limits before a certain possession crime becomes a felony? If we can make less felons, that's certainly a road to more reform in this country. So if you're in some conservative Midwestern state or Southern state and you don't think there's a way you can do reform, think about defelonizing some of these crimes. And you can attack this by showing how much it costs to house an offender. $30,000 a year in some states to house an offender who's convicted of a felony crime, or as low as $13,000 a year in Louisiana. So there's, between $15,000 and $30,000 a year. Show that cost. Show the cost of taking them through the courts, through all of the felony appeals, and we can make a dent in this and maybe have more voters available for us when we're trying to change these laws. And the other reason Florida is leading the nation in felon disenfranchisement has to do with those limits that I was just telling you about. What it takes to create a felon in the state of Florida. This is another map that I put together that I call felony marijuana amounts. And it is color-coded to show you how much it takes to automatically be a felon in these particular states. How much is a per se felony in these states? Now, it varies from state to state, and it's a little hard to pin down because some of them have variances, some of them have specific laws on cultivation, some don't. And also, you can get different felonies based on, say, how close you were to a school, or whether or not there was possession with intent to sell. Right? So like your 8 ounces might be possession, but if you have 8 ounces in a scale, now it's a felony. Or if you had a firearm, even if it's legally owned a firearm, that can change your misdemeanor into a felony. So we're not paying attention to all of those what ifs that could make something a felony. This is just, if you look at NORML.org and you take a look at the number it takes to make a felony, that's what this map represents. And now let me get into a little more detail and show you what we're talking about here. The black states are the states where an amount of less than an ounce can be a felony. Less than 28 grams can be a felony. Now, there's only 2 states where this is possible. In the state of Florida, the worst state, more than 20 grams is automatically a felony. Now, that's not even an ounce, folks. That's about 3/4 of an ounce is an automatic felony in the state of Florida. There is also, and you can see from this icon that looks like a pot leaf with a slash through it, personal cultivation is a felony. And I put that on there because in some states they don't actually have a cultivation felony. They just have possession. But the possession of that plant you're cultivating counts against the weight. So yeah, there is a felony for it. They just don't specifically say if you have 3 plants, you have 10 plants, you have any plants. But in every state, just about, cultivation of a plant is a felony. And the other state that's really harsh on this is Arizona. Any amount less than 2 pounds in Arizona can be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony. Guess it depends on the DA and some of the circumstances, but literally a speck of pot could be a felony in Arizona. Probably wouldn't be charged as that, but it could be. It's on the books that way. Then you'll see a whole bunch of these states that have gray shading, and the gray shading indicates that there is no specific amount that makes a felony. For example, in the state of California, all of its possession penalties are misdemeanors of varying levels where you can get more and more prison time depending on how much you have. But they don't have a specific amount that triggers a felony. And that's in a lot of states, actually. Iowa is that way, Michigan, Pennsylvania, a lot of the New England states don't have a specific felony amount. But again, you could be charged for cultivation felony, for sales felony, all sorts of other ways they could get you. Now, as we look at some of these states that are gray and black, like Kansas or Oklahoma, these are states where your first possession is a misdemeanor, but any subsequent possession is a felony. So the second time they catch you in Kansas, felony. Second time they catch you in Oklahoma, felony, right? And there's some of these other states that vary, and let me go back to the guide here. We've once again color-coded the states based on how much you can have before you're automatically a felon. So the darkest red, an ounce makes you a felon. Bright red, 2 ounces makes you a felon. Orange, 4 ounces makes you a felon. Yellow states, 8 ounces makes you a felon. Light green, it takes a pound to make you a felon. Dark green, it takes you over a kilogram to make you a felon. And so as we look at the states, it's quite surprising what you'll find. For example, out here in the West, we already pointed out Arizona, any amount can make you a felon. But in the other 4 corner states, in New Mexico and Colorado, you have to have a half pound on you before you're automatically a felon. And in Utah, you have to have over a pound on you before you're a felon. That's right. Let me underline that and repeat. In Utah, you have to have over a pound before you're a felon. So, we all think a Utah super hyper conservative must hate pot, but actually, up to a pound, you're still only committing a misdemeanor. Now compare that to the great Pacific Northwest, where I'm living, where everybody thinks, oh, Washington and Oregon, medical marijuana, Oregon's got decrim, everybody's all pot friendly. But notice the dark red color of Washington and Oregon. That means it only takes you an ounce, and in Washington is 40 grams, so an ounce and a half. But it only takes you a little less than 2 ounces to be a felon in the state of Washington or Oregon. A pound in Utah, a little over a couple of ounces in Oregon or Washington.
That's why I never leave the house with more than an ounce.
Yeah, don't leave the house with more than an ounce. And
even as a medical patient, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And when we're talking about, activism here in Oregon, and everybody complains like, oh, it's all medical, everybody's all medical. What's there to do for, we're already decrim in Oregon. Yeah, well, here's a perfect thing to take on in Oregon, raising that ounce to something reasonable. Yeah. It's amazing to me that if you have 27 grams on you, you're going to get a $100 ticket and no criminal record. If you have 29 grams on you, you're a felon. That just cannot be. That is something we should definitely be working on here in the state of Oregon. Now, looking around some of the other states, of course, Montana, if you have over 2 ounces, over 60 grams, you're a felon. If you have under 60 grams, the second time, you're still a felon. So it takes over 60 grams to be a felon in Montana, but the second offense, it takes any amount, and you're a felon. Idaho and Wyoming, 3 ounces will create a felony for you. And then some other surprises. Again, Nebraska takes a pound to become a felon. Texas and Alaska take 4 ounces before you become a felon. And in Alaska, there's a new icon there you may not have noticed, this little 25 on the pot plant. You have to be cultivating 25 plants or more in Alaska to be a felon. Under 25 plants is not a felony. Same thing goes for Hawaii. Under 25 plants, not automatically a felony. Kansas, believe it or not, you have to be cultivating 5 plants in Kansas before they automatically consider that a felony. Ohio is another one of these states. Over 200 grams is that what it takes to create a felony. In New York, over half a pound is a felony. And then one other thing, I've made another icon here. Looks like a couple icons, actually. It looks like an apple with a slash through it. This shows you where if you possess any amount near a school, and that's usually 1,000 feet within a school, then you're a felon. And that would apply to Arizona, Kansas, Louisiana, Georgia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Delaware. Any amount near a school, you're a felon. And the problem with that is, in most urban areas, you are within 1,000 feet of a school. No matter where you're at. In most cities, you're within 1,000 feet of these protected areas. So it makes felons out of people who are only having misdemeanor amounts on them if it was considered for personal use, but because they're close to a school, even if they're not outside. I mean, they could be upstairs in their 5th floor apartment, the door's locked, but because they're within 1,000 feet of a school, they'll tack a felony onto that. And one other icon, this looks like a little pot pipe with a slash through it. These are the states where sales of paraphernalia is a felony. If you sell a pot pipe, you're committing a felony. And that counts for Nevada, Idaho, Missouri, Indiana, Tennessee, New Jersey, Delaware, and of course under United States law, federal law, it is a felony to sell paraphernalia. So that's a look at our video here on the felony marijuana amounts. And again, this will be part of the big book of marijuana facts that I'm putting out. And I'm targeting July 1st for having it done, but I'd actually like to have some pre-production copies ready for the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. We will be there at the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup on June 24th through 26th. I think those are the dates. Am I got those right, John? 24th through 26th?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it might be 25th and 26th.
Something like that.
We're going to be there the 24th for pre-parties and stuff like that.
Right, we got to set up and everything. So that will be there in San Francisco, California. They got a new venue this year, and I hope to have some copies of the Big Book of Marijuana Facts ready for you. We'll get them signed and everything, and you can get your own copy. Full color pages, they'll be 11 by 17, and the design of the book is made so that we can show it at events. You know, like if you're at a Hemp Fest or something, you can show people these charts and give them an idea what's going on in marijuana law reform. So stay tuned for that coming up at a festival near you, the Big Book of Marijuana Facts. We hope to have that done very, very soon. Okay, and also a few little extra pieces of news here as we wind up the show. We got about 5 minutes here, so I wanted to show you a couple of news stories that caught my eye this afternoon. First of all, you know, John, how they have URL shorteners?
Yes, I do. I actually, yeah, I do.
They have these URL shorteners, like, you know, you get a long website address, you know, stash.normal.org/ what the hell is wrong with this big long URL.html, right?
Right.
These big long URLs, right? And so when you want to tweet that, that's way too many characters, and so you send it something like bit.ly or is good, these little tiny, like is.gd or bit.ly.
They're even set up for, like, websites like huff.po.
Right.
You know, stuff like that.
Huffington Post has them. It's huff.to and
ny.times, you know, like all kinds of stuff like that.
So there's all these URL shorteners out there, and a friend of mine out there on the net, Twitter friend of mine, Amber Chase, she is a porn model. But I met her up at Seattle Hemp Fest. Nothing, you know, shaky here, folks. Everything's on the up and up. But I met her at Hemp Fest because she's also considers herself a cannababe, right? You know, kind of, you know, trying to bring that industry on to, you know, supporting marijuana law reforms.
Oh, I know a few of those.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, she sent a tweet out, and her tweet had this URL shortener for a website that apparently she works for or works with called mypornprofile.com. Mypornprofile.com. And so the URL shortener is mpp.tc. So I just wanted to thank Keith Stropp for making the acronym NORML so that we don't have to be confused with mypornprofile.tc. That cracked me up. I just had to do that. Also, I wanted to show this video. I was telling John about this. Amazing video from, well, this was on Huffington Post, but it was the Tampa Bay Rays baseball player, Evan Longoria, I guess his name is. And he was doing an interview and talking to this sports reporter. This lady is a sports reporter. And while he's talking, they're doing batting practice kind of in the background. And well, I'll just play the shot for you because this is like, I don't like baseball. I mean, if you've heard the show at all, I'm not at all a baseball fan. And usually when I get these clips or something of baseball, I don't pay attention to. But this one is amazing. Check this out.
Evan, there's been a lot of changes this offseason for your team. How do you feel your chances are in the AL East?
I mean, I love our chances. You know, it's been... Dad, keep it on the field.
That was ridiculous.
The amazing shot. For those, of course, listening on the podcast, you can't see what's going on here, but check it out at Huffington Post. Look up Evan Longoria's crazy bare hand catch. Basically what happened is while they were talking there and taking batting practice, one of the balls came flying right at the reporter's head, and just briefly turning real quick to see it coming, the guy catches it barehanded, like with 2 frames before it smacks her in the head. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen. So I just wanted to share that with you. And one other piece of news, this is fantastic news, coming from our affiliate in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison NORML announces on Tuesday, May 17th at 6:30 p.m., Madison's Common Council, which I guess is the city council, right? Madison City Council will honor the life of Ben Maisel and his contributions to the community and formally declare April 20th as Ben Maisel Day in the city of Madison.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so great stuff for Ben. Yeah, Ben Maisel Day. That is so awesome. So glad, look forward to that.
What a great tribute.
Great tribute. 420 will be Ben Maisel Day in the city of Madison, officially from the city council. But you don't hear that very often. Also, a story up on cannabis culture that I just briefly was taking a look at. A man who promotes marijuana as a church sacrament has asked to be sent to jail Monday rather than serve a community sentence. He was Shahruz Karagani, age 32, was found guilty of trafficking marijuana and hash in a Queen Street East neighborhood. If sentenced to house arrest, he would immediately smoke pot to commune with God, violating a condition to keep the peace and be of good behavior, his lawyer said. Such a violation would mean going straight to jail, so he might as well go straight to jail. So, there you go. The guy says, look, you put me on house arrest, I'm going to smoke anyway, so... yeah, throw me in jail. You know, I got the same idea, man. If I ever got popped, you know, and they said, well, you have to go to, drug rehab for 6 months and pee in a cup.
Jail.
Put me in jail for a couple weeks, man. Might as
Put me in jail for a month. I don't care.
I'll go 2 weeks without weed rather than 6, right? 6 months. It's ridiculous. We got to end it, and that's why we're here. Folks, we got to go. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. For Ganja John and Cannabis Carry, I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
of the earth.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you